change. Whatever your questions are about what is now the second worst wildfire season in BC's history, we are here to take your answers. And I want to introduce you to myself and my guests. I'm meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe out here in Vancouver. We have Chief Fire Information Officer Kevin Skrepnek of BC Wildfire Service, who has been with us over the past couple of months giving us updates, and Dr. Raj, who is out of Calgary, also here to help take your questions. So thank you, you two, for joining us, and thank you, everyone, for just joining in now. I just want to start off, if I can actually ask you, Kevin, to just give us a bit of an update on where we are right now with firefighting efforts.
Yeah, certainly. So definitely, we've had a bit of a turn in terms of the weather. Things are a little cooler. We're not seeing those unseasonably hot temperatures, and many parts of the province have seen rain. So that's all good news. But unfortunately, in some of the areas where we needed it most, particularly in central BC, where we've got a lot of these fires burning, we saw very little rain, if any at all. So still a lot of challenges up there, and even in areas where we did see rain, certainly not enough to end the season by any stretch of the imagination. So still over 530 fires burning across BC right now, and given that we're not seeing that widespread relief just yet in terms of the weather, definitely bracing for that situation to continue for at least another few weeks here.
Yeah, as Kevin mentioned, things have taken a bit of a turn. I've been following very closely the change in the weather pattern. We've been dealing with these dominant high pressure systems for the entire summer. It's nice to see a northwesterly flow, one that brings in systems from the Pacific. As Kevin mentioned, not the kind of rain-ending system, but the kind of wind-shifting mixing of air systems. So I actually want to bring in Dr. Raj, because we're seeing a lot of cloud cover, cooler temperatures. We are certainly still seeing smoky conditions for those communities, but we are seeing some clearing. Can you give us a bit of a sense of what communities have been dealing with health-wise so far over the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, here in Calgary and in Edmonton and, as far away as Saskatchewan, Manitoba, there's been a lot of smoke in the air, and we've been hearing about, people who you can look directly at the sun. Don't look directly at the sun, folks, but you can, because it's, it's so hazed out from all the smoke. And because of that, in the emergency rooms, we're seeing a lot more people coming in with lung problems, but also people with heart problems, and then sort of less severe things like itchy eyes and burning throats and stuff like that. So it's quite widespread, and for some people it's dangerous. For other people, it's more just irritating.
I want to bring it back to you, Kevin. We're getting some great questions in. And again, if you're just joining us, we are taking your live questions on the BC wildfire season. And I've got a question here from Twitter. Kevin, do you think that there's any validity to the idea that decades of forest management / fire suppression means there's more forests around BC than there ought to be? And that kind of ties in with another question from Marcus Chi on Facebook. What kind of wildfire management are we using right now?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that it's been an issue, and not just in British Columbia, but really in North America. We've had decades of very aggressive fire suppression. Now, on the face of it, that sounds like a positive thing, but of course, because typically, the fires we're talking about that are threatening people, threat fires that are on news, things like that, are interface fires. They're fires that need to be fought because they're threatening values, threatening communities. But for quite a few decades in North America, we've been fighting every fire as if it was an interface fire, as if it was a clear and present danger. And that has definitely contributed to the fact that we've got so much fuel going on. A lot of forests, a lot of ecosystems in BC, fires and natural life cycle. And we've moved them past 100 years, quite frankly. So that's something that I think broadly, the forest industry and wildfire season embraced over the last decades. We've started to move to a more progressive stand. We do often monitor fires that are in the wilderness as opposed to just going in and fighting directly at a small size, so that natural fire can move through the area. But it's a large province, and there are still areas where there is significant fuel buildup, and that's certainly part of why we're seeing such aggressive fires now.
Great questions coming in again on Twitter and Facebook. If you're just joining us, I'm meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. We've got Chief Fire Information Officer Kevin Skrepnek and Dr. Raj out of Calgary taking your questions on the wildfire season. I want to direct this one over to Dr. Raj. Kevin, you sort of touched on this. If this is to become our new normal or our normal summer, which is something that I've seen closely as climate change has already extended our fire season with longer, hotter and drier summers. What plans are there to not only prevent major wildfires, but deal with it? And Dr. Raj, I wonder if this is something that, that you and your colleagues are thinking about when it comes to long-term health impacts of what many experts are calling a no smoke option in the future.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, from a public health point of view, I think it would be several levels above my pay grade to talk about, what kinds of policies might be in place. But it's something that I think that we will have to think about. I mean, the World Health Organization has come out and said air pollution in general is a cancer-causing agent. So we will have to think about, just like we ask people about, how many packs a day do you smoke, will we be asking people in the future, where do you live and how many days a year is your air quality greater than a certain number? So that's something that I think might be coming down the road, but gosh, I would love to see that if we didn't have to deal with that sort of stuff on a population level, and if we were able to mitigate the fires and the smoke from the fires so that we could still deal with this as we are now, basically on a personal level rather than a population public health level.
Kevin, over to you. A question from Kathleen Phipps on Facebook. How does BC determine or triage fire response? And this is a question that I've been getting a lot. If we've got multiple fires starting after one of those dry cold fronts come through that we've been seeing so often this summer, a couple weeks of record heat, and then all of a sudden lightning strikes and gusty winds, and we see dozens of fires. How does your team choose which ones to respond to first?
Well, that can definitely be a challenge. We've had days this summer with 170 new fires starting, in a single 24-hour period. So, no matter what level of resources you have, fire crews, aircraft, equipment, it's going to be a challenge to manage a load like that. So definitely, as we speak, over 530 fires burning. So we do have to prioritize our efforts, and we need to look first and foremost at the fires that are going to be posing the most threat. Whether it's to communities, whether it's to infrastructure. So, certainly the fires that we've got right now burning on that Highway 16 corridor, broadly speaking, between Smithers and Prince George, those are our highest priority fires right now, because that is really the most pressing threat to communities, to infrastructure like transmission lines, fiber optic cables, Highway 16 itself. So we need to focus our efforts there. Having said that, that does mean that there are fires right now that are not getting the same response they would, say, in a slower season. We're monitoring those fires. We're not just letting them burn, but we do have to put our resources where where the most threat is. So that is, though, why we have brought in so many additional personnel, from out of the province. We've got in the neighborhood of 4,500 people working right now just under the Wildfire Service, so that we can expand our capacity, not only to manage all these fires, but also to make sure that we're addressing our fatigue. It's been a long, steady summer. We want to make sure we're getting our crews rested. And obviously, fatigue becomes a concern this far into the summer, just given how busy it's already been.
Kevin, you answered a follow-up question from Carlo Clem. How many people are involved in the fight across BC? And you said 4,500 personnel right now? Yeah,
it fluctuates on a day-by-day basis, but in that neighborhood, 4,500. That's inclusive, of course, all the staff here at the Wildfire Service, over 1,600 contractors from the forest industry here in BC. So that's fire crews, tree fallers, equipment operators, things like that. Assistance from the Canadian Armed Forces. Other wildfire agencies in Canada have been hugely supportive. Just about every other agency right across the country has contributed. And then, of course, we do also have personnel from Mexico, New Zealand, and Australia right now. And I believe we're also in talks to start bringing in some resources from Washington State as well. So certainly a huge effort, just given the scale and magnitude of what we're dealing with.
Lots of great feedback from you on Facebook and Twitter, asking about the firefighters. Speaking on that topic, Carol Usher asks on Facebook, what about proper protection, breathing apparatus for the firefighters and for people, for that matter, in communities? Dr. Raj, is that something that you can speak to? What are the best methods that people can use to protect themselves from such poor air quality?
Well, I could speak to sort of the general population, maybe not the firefighters, because they're in a completely different sort of situation where they also have the heat and the smoke is right there. But if you're in a place where there's a lot of fire smoke going on, there's a few things that you can do, and it goes from simple things like keeping your windows closed in your house and changing your furnace filters and keeping your windows up in the car and putting your car air conditioning on recirculate. So little simple things like that. To a little bit more, you can maybe try a humidifier in your bedroom at night, just because if there is a little bit more water vapor in the air, then that tends to grab on to some of those tiny little smoke particles and sort of drop them out of the air so that you're not breathing them in. You could try taking a shower before going to bed so that those air particles, those smoke particles aren't on your face, in your hair, things like that, so that when you sleep, you're not sort of in contact with them all night. Other than that, I mean, these particles from fire smoke are very, very small. They're a lot smaller than things like pollen particles or regular dust particles. So they get much deeper into your lungs and they cause more inflammation because they're down there. And because of that, that can obviously cause trouble breathing, and that can also put more strain on your heart because as your oxygen level is lower, your heart has to work harder to get the same amount of oxygen to the tissues. So, for people with lung problems or heart problems, they have to be especially careful of their breathing and mindful of their breathing and their work of breathing. And if that's starting to increase, then they should be talking to their doctor or going into the emergency room to talk about, maybe adjusting puffers and things like that. If you've never used puffers before and you're finding that your breathing is getting tight or it feels compromised in some way, I wouldn't just go use somebody else's puffer. I'd actually go and get that checked out properly, because there are other things that can cause sort of a tight chest.
Great advice there. Again, we're getting some just great questions here on Facebook and Twitter. If you are just joining us, we've got myself, meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe, Kevin Skrepnek from BC Wildfire Information Officer, and Dr. Raj out of Calgary, taking your questions on what is the second worst wildfire season in BC's history. I've got a couple of questions here that kind of tie into to all of us. Lisa Sinclair on Facebook, what percentage of the fires are from lightning strikes? We had another question from John Hyde on Facebook, and how many of these fires are deliberately set? And I just want to start off, before I hand it over to you, Kevin, that we are seeing an increase in lightning strikes with climate change. This is a topic that scientists are looking at closely, but generally the trend has been up as we get more severe storms, more blocking patterns. This year alone, we've had 10 to 15% more lightning strikes than the last 10-year average. And that is, I know, contributing to new starts, but I'm actually not sure on the numbers this year. Kevin, can you speak to that split between lightning and human started fires?
No, you're spot on. So we've had over 2,000 fires so far this year, so since April 1st, which is above average and certainly above what we saw last year. The vast majority of those were the result of lightning, so well over 75% of the fires suspected to be lightning caused at this point. So as you said, there seems to be some connections there in terms of climate change and increased frequency of lightning. For us, it's not just the fact that there's lightning occurring. Of course, it's dry lightning. That's of particular concern to us. And we've seen a bit of a mixed bag this year. There's been a lot of lightning over the course of the summer. Some of it's come with a lot of rain, some of it's come with a little bit, and it's still been problematic. It's been not enough rain that it was still able to start a fire. We still had to get out there and contain them. And then, of course, we've also seen lightning this year that was just bone dry. And given how hot and dry it was in the lead up to that, it was almost guaranteed that was going to result in lightning strikes. So definitely the lion's share of activity this year, the result of that lightning. But to the other question, certainly, over 400 of the fires have been human caused. So every one of those fires, in one way or another, was preventable. And when we're this busy from these naturally occurring fires, of course, the last thing we want to be seeing is human-caused incidents. It diverts resources, diverts time. and certainly they can be just as destructive as the lightning-caused fires.
Kevin, a quick follow-up from Anita Swerdlick. How big of a difference do controlled fires make on managing the situation?
Yeah, so, there's kind of two facets to that. Operationally, we'll use fire to fight fire. There's different techniques there, burning out, back burning, basically consuming the fuel before the fire has a chance to do so. So doing it on our terms and trying to take that out so that the fire has nowhere to grow. It's something that happens on a day-by-day basis on almost all the fires we fight to varying degrees. In some cases, it's a small area that we're going to burn out ahead of time. In other cases, it's quite a high magnitude. The other side of that coin is prescribed burn. So that's happens in the in the off seasons, in the spring and the fall. It's not connected to actually fighting a specific fire. It's more so about removing the fuel. And it's interesting. I mean, Johanna, your podcast series from last year touched on this. There is sometimes apprehension about the use of prescribed burning because it does create smoke, and it can sometimes be a bit disruptive. But we've seen 2 summers in a row now where many parts of the province were completely socked in with smoke for weeks on end. Prescribed burning does create smoke, but it does so in a bit more of a managed fashion, and if it's done properly, quite often that smoke's going to vent out and not cause an issue. So I think definitely we are going to have to start looking at that paradigm going forward, that there is going to need to be more prescribed burning. That's what all the reviews and reports out of the past seasons have told us. And it's a big project and it's a big province, but that's definitely going to be an aspect of what we need to do going forward to try to mitigate this.
I'm going to, we've still got a couple minutes for questions for everyone who's joining us, but Dr. Raj Bhardwaj out of Calgary, I know you have to get going. Thank you so much for joining us. I know there have been so many health questions and we didn't get to them all, so we'll try and follow up on Facebook. But Dr. Raj, thank you for joining us. We'll still be here, but I appreciate you stopping in from smoky Calgary.
Thanks, Joanna.
Kevin, I'm just going to pick up on another question we've got here about the forecast. I know this is something that people are watching very closely, both you and I and firefighters and everyone across British Columbia. We've seen this change in pattern, and I actually just want to take you to one of my maps where I'm watching what will be a rainfall forecast over the next 24 hours. This little low pressure system that's actually just crossing into the province right now is actually bringing some good rain to the northwest. Around the Telegraph Creek area, I'm seeing maybe 10 to 15 millimeters today. This system will then spread showers across the rest of the province. But as has been the case with every system so far this summer, it comes with gusty winds and the risk for lightning strikes. I also see, and I've been interested to ask you this, Kevin, a drop in the fire danger rating whenever we do get these cooler, wetter patterns. So while we're not actually seeing the forecast have an impact with this little amount of rain on ending these fires, it is dropping the fire danger rating. And this is a question from Sharon Anderson about the weather forecast. But can you sort of explain what impacts these cooler, showery weathers have on the fire danger rating, not necessarily ending those fires?
No, certainly. So, we've definitely turned a bit of a corner in terms of the weather. I wouldn't be surprised if we are in the if we don't break the 30-degree mark again for the foreseeable future, kind of based on what we're seeing right now. So lower temperatures, higher humidities, those are great. But it's that rain that's going to be so critical in terms of actually, putting some of these fires out, or at least lessening their activity. In terms of the fire danger rating, it's a day-by-day measure, so it is somewhat quick. So you'll have cooler temps, you'll have rain come through, higher humidities. You'll see, a pretty immediate reaction in terms of the fire danger rating, typically, going down in a scenario like that. But it can rebound just as quickly. So we look at typically some more cumulative measures. Fire danger rating is looking at a number of factors and a number of kind of varying depths of the forest floor. So if you get a little bit of rain, it's certainly going to lower the intensity of what a fire might be doing on the top layer of the forest, kind of in the brush and in the needles. But deeper down, where you've got more of those drought conditions, more of those cumulative conditions based on what you've seen all summer, that takes a pretty sustained and long soaking of rain to really push that back. So definitely, we'll take whatever rain we can get, and definitely, the increase, the decrease, I should say, in temperatures and the higher humidities has definitely lessened some fire activity out there. It's that long and sustained rain that's really going to hit the reset switch. So as you said, that is in the forecast right now for the Northwest. So for the Alkali Lake fire, which is currently the largest single fire in the province, it's threatening Telegraph Creek and the surrounding area. That's good news for us in that realm. But for that central part of the province, unfortunately, at least based on the forecast we're seeing right now, little to no rain expected in that area for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, Kevin, unfortunately, I've been watching for those long-range switches, and we're just not seeing those soaking systems yet. But I know both you and I are watching closely. We've got time for one more question. Again, this has just been a great chat with you on Facebook, and those of you joining on YouTube as well. Larry Rowe on Facebook asks, any estimates on the amount of carbon released in these fires and how that carbon might have an effect on global warming and its feedback? This is an interesting question. I'm glad you brought it up. Last year, we did get some numbers on how much carbon the forests were actually releasing back into the atmosphere because, of course, the forests are such a great carbon capture, taking in more than they admit. So when we see those forests burn, they do release amount of carbon back into the atmosphere. Last year, 3 times BC's annual average carbon footprint. So I imagine the numbers will be similar to this year. Those numbers aren't included in BC's annual footprint, but a lot of climate scientists are pushing to have those numbers included because our seasons are getting worse. And so that is something to think about, because the more carbon we're emitting into the atmosphere, the less forest that we have to capture it. That's certainly adding to the big picture. And I know that's something that we're all thinking about, is the fact that this is our 2nd year in a row that we've seen such an unusual season. And I just want to end on the fact that we won't see these kinds of extreme wildfire seasons every year, but the trend will be towards longer, hotter, drier summers, and therefore more extreme fire seasons. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us. We had Dr. Raj earlier from Calgary and Kevin Skrepnek. You're always great giving us the latest information. I know you've been very busy. We'll try and get to more of your questions online. But again, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll keep you posted on the situation and keep hoping for that rain.